I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, all of you know who I am, so I won't introduce myself, but a little bit about the Pledge of Allegiance, a little history, and this is not found in the book. It was actually written by Francis Bellamy. I don't know if you knew he was actually a Baptist minister, and his father was a minister, and he actually was a member of the First Baptist Church, not of Gridley, but of New York. So a little history there. It was actually written in 1800s, I think it was 1892. And it actually changed a few times, the Pledge of Allegiance. First, they didn't have the United States of America in it. Bellamy wanted every country to actually be able to use the Pledge of Allegiance, to pledge to their flag. It wasn't until the 1940s that actually included the United States of America. It's because the immigrants that actually come into the United States, when they pledge allegiance to the flag, they didn't know if they were pledging allegiance to the United States flag or their prior flag. So they changed it at that time. And then in 1954, Under God was actually added to the Pledge of Allegiance. And that, Dwight D. Eisenhower was a big influence on that. And I'll read why they did it. It says, to reaffirm the transcendence of religious faith in America's heritage and future and strengthen those spiritual weapons which forever will be our country's most powerful resource in peace and war. Kind of brings you back to the Founding Fathers, how they set up the Constitution. God, natural laws. And a little bit about the American flag. This isn't the book either, but we referred to it, it came about June 14th, 1777. We referred to it as Old Glory, Stars and Stripes, the Star-Spangled Banner. It's an important part of our nation's history, represents the freedom, dignity, and true meaning of being an American. Our flag is an aspiring symbol that unites us as American citizens, everlasting memory of those who have sacrificed their lives defending the principles of the United States of America, and it's actually a bright hope and light for all humanity. That's what the symbol, that's what the flag represents. And it's being attacked big time right now, but that's what it represents to me and I think most Americans that are here. Welcome, guys. Welcome. Oh, no, not a problem. So how did we come across this book? Actually, a lot of you know what's going on in the world, all the troubles we have. And I read a lot. I read about 4 or 5 books, usually biographies or things that's going on in the economy or society. And I said, there's got to be some information out here how we're drifting away from our values, the principles of how our founding fathers set this nation up. And I searched, and I actually came across this. It's from the National Center of Constitutional Studies. And I got about halfway through it. I said, man, this is really good. So I ordered 10 more. Got them, and I mailed them to some of my family members, hand-delivered them. I actually mailed one to a government official in Sacramento and actually walked it into the superintendent of schools here in Gridley. I wrote a little note on there. I didn't see him. I handed it off to staff. I said, great book, should be taught in all high school classes. That's how good I thought it was. And then I got to hand those out, and I ordered 10 more. So I thought it was by the time I got through with it. And I took those 10, actually, Rotary, I'm part of Rotary, and I gave one out, and I had 9 left. And then Rotary had a meeting that asked me to present something. So I thought this would be a good idea to present this at the meeting. And I kid you not, this is how it happened. It was at lunchtime. I got in my car. In the car we have, when you turn the motor on, the radio automatically comes on. Well, I have it tuned to a Christian channel. Well, I was on my way to the meeting, and this song came on. It says, it's something about fire, destruction. It was a bad song, and so I turned it off right away. I said, that's not good going into a speech thinking that. So I turned it off, went to the meeting. It was a real positive meeting because this book talks about God. It talks about the Bible. And I was really encouraged because we talked about this, and I handed out all 9 of those books. All 9 of them, very receptive. And some actually, there's more than 9 there. Some actually were going to order it online because they liked it. When I hop back in the car, remember, the radio comes automatically. I don't know if this is divine, just luck, dumb luck. I turned it on, and I kid you not, the first thing that was on there says, the song was, "Thank You, Faithful Servant." It just hit me really hard. It's like a ton of bricks in a good way hitting you. And it's like, wow. And I did share that with you. That actually happened. So, and then after that, I actually ordered 40 more books. So if somebody doesn't have a book here, let me know and we'll get you one, okay? I'll hand them out in a little bit. All right. So the outline, there's actually, we're going to try to get through the first 33 pages today, try to. And then we're going to break it down. There's 28 principles in this book, and we'll try to break it down 1, 2, or 3 each week. And Pastor Dave will be here next week to help me. So that'll be good. So I guess I'll turn this to you guys. What do you guys hope to get out of this study, this discussion? Anybody? Don't know? What I wish to accomplish is actually pass on knowledge. But if you guys like this, do the same thing I did. You know, take the book, hand it to somebody else. They can learn. I think all high school kids this should be a class for all high school kids, to believe in the country, to love the country that they're part of. And it comes back to either being a participant or an agitator. We've got both of those. Most people are participants, but we've got a lot of agitators. They don't believe in these principles on how we live. They want to change it, okay? So just pass it on, maybe buy a book. And I'm not here to sell books for the sinner, but if you believe it, just buy one and pass it on. The more people know about this stuff, maybe we can start getting people back to the principles, why this nation was founded and how we can move forward. All right, so let's start through the book. And I'm just going to read a little bit out of the book. I won't read paragraphs, but the introductory, and Chuck and Terry, you don't have a book? Who else doesn't have a book? 3, 4? These are a gift from me. So I think you got yours from the church, but these are from me. They're yours. Huh? Oh, you can get them online if you buy a whole bunch of them, about $10. You can get them online if you buy a whole bunch, about $10. You have to buy about more than 10, I think. Yeah. So miracles at Philadelphia. This is kind of introductory. It talks about competence, wisdom, and motivations. And he's talking about the founding fathers. Unprecedented in human history. This had never been done before, how they set up the United States, the Constitution. Influenced, guided, and governed by the hand of God. You guys will find that almost all the founding fathers had a belief in a higher power. They didn't come all from the same faith, but they had a belief in a higher power. James Wilson, governments in general have been the result of force, of fraud, and accident. That's the way most governments over time were formed. Not this one. They assembled voluntarily, accomplished a revolution which has no parallel in the annals of human society. They reared the fabric of governments which have no model on the face of the globe. Nobody had ever done this before. All the information was out there to do this. Nobody did it until our founding fathers put it all together. They researched a lot. They took a lot of information from the Bible, you'll find out, and a lot of smart people in the past. Cicero, Robin mentioned when she came in. A lot of smart people, and a lot from the Bible. John Adams, the Constitution is the greatest single effort of national deliberation that the world has ever seen. Benjamin Franklin, influenced, guided, and governed by an omnipotent, omnipresent, and beneficent ruler in whom all inferior spirits live and move and have their being. James Madison talks about the almighty hand. Charles Pinckney, hand of providence. So these guys over and over talk about God. George Washington, finger of providence. Thomas Jefferson, the example of changing a constitution by assembling the wise men of the state instead of assembling armies will be worth as much to the world as the former examples we had given them. Thomas Jefferson, blessing to all nations of the earth. And then James Madison, my profound and solemn conviction that there never was an assembly of men charged with a great and arduous trust as were more pure in their motives or more exclusively or anxiously devoted to the object committed to them than were the members of the Federal Convention of 1787, to the object of devising, proposing a constitutional system which should best secure the permanent liberty and happiness of their country. Folks, these guys, they were power. They had high positions. Some were poor, some were rich, all different backgrounds, but they had the power at that time. Think about it. They could have taken the power. Think about these other governments in force, China or Russia, Iran. They could have taken this power. They didn't. They actually formed it so the people were in power. Think about that. A little research on the Constitution. The concept of race does not even exist in the Constitution. I'll give you guys a copy of this tonight. Nowhere in the Constitution or Declaration of Independence are humans classified according to race, skin color, ethnicity, sex, religion, or any other groupings. Our founding principles are colorblind. The Constitution, Bill of Rights, are colorblind. Slavery was a state institution that was tolerated but not sanctioned by the national government and the Constitution. I don't know why, people are probably shaking their heads, why wasn't slavery abolished when the Constitution was formed? I do know by research, it talks about a little bit, Jamestown was one of the first settlements, and it was actually named after King James I. When they came here, a lot of them died from disease, starvation. It was brutal, and they set up their system more of a social, where they asked everybody to go out and work, and then bring things back, and then everybody got to share. One day, somebody bright came from overseas and said, hey, we're doing this wrong. I'm going to give you some land. I'm going to give you some land. You guys go out and produce. You can keep most of the fruits of your labor, but we want some of it to come back into our coffers. Then everything started taking off. Capitalism started. But in the late 1600s, I believe it was the Quakers in Pennsylvania, they wanted to abolish slavery. I don't know if you knew that or not. And actually, late 1700, Thomas Jefferson, and this isn't in the book, this is just my research, Thomas Jefferson actually tried to pass a bill, I think it's late 1700s, tried to pass a bill through government at that time to abolish slavery, but it didn't pass by one vote. So it kept going. What they did do in 1808, right after the convention and the Constitution put in force, in 1808, they actually stopped all incoming slavery to the United States. And they also stopped it from the northern part and also the expansion out to the west. They stopped it at that time. And why they didn't abolish the whole, don't know. There was different motives. I know that southern states were really big to slavery. They wanted it real bad, the free labor, to sell stuff. But why they didn't abolish it was wrong. Well, they were probably thinking what happened later, 1865 with Lincoln. There was estimated that 600,000 to 750,000 people died in the Civil War. So they were probably thinking along the same lines. Revolution happened, a lot of people died, not that many. But that maybe they just didn't have the stomach for it at that time. So a little background. So the Constitution is an anti-slavery document. A nation not founded on a common ethnicity, language, or religion. It was founded on a set of beliefs and convictions, self-evident truths embedded in the Bill of Rights of the Constitution. To become an American citizen, it was about endorsing and embracing the values established at the founding. That was what American citizen was, to believe in our founding principles and abide by them. Okay? Little history. All right. So on to the book here. Now I'm going to start on page, I'm on the very first of it, a little more from the paragraphs. The power of the Constitution will always be in the people. Anybody know why the Constitution was put in force? One of the reasons? Huh? Why it was put in force? Why they came up with the Constitution? What book talks about that very good? And they wanted the people in charge. Again, comes back to the people. And Chuck mentioned it. They didn't want a king, tyranny, and then they didn't want the other side, anarchy. And when we get into this, they wanted someplace right in the middle where the people were in charge. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I think we've seen that over the years, huh? Good people have remained silent, and look what's happened. I think majority of people are good. It's that small percentage that are wreaking all the havoc. If angels were to govern men, neither external or internal controls on government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself. I think we have trouble on both sides of that over the years, too, recently. All right, so I'm going to go to the forward on page Roman numeral 15. And this is written by Thomas Jefferson. It says, "We owe every endurable sacrifice to ourselves, to our federal brethren, and to the world at large to pursue with temper and perseverance the great experiment which shall prove that man is capable of living in society, governing itself by laws self-imposed, and securing to its members the enjoyment of life, liberty, property, and peace." So the people elect the government. And the government is to do the will of the people. Okay? And he's going back to the 28 principles. Simply put, these principles are the essential ingredients of freedom. We move away from these principles, less freedom. After the proven principles of liberty were institutionalized by the U.S. Constitution in the 1780s, it took less than 200 years before men were walking on the moon. Man had literally progressed more than the previous 5,000 years. In other words, in less than 2 centuries, the American people made a 5,000-year leap. So the Constitution unleashed not only freedoms in the United States, but around the world. And this document actually unleashed freedoms down the line, too. We talk about African Americans, we talk about women, the right to vote. This is just the start that unleashed a whole bunch of freedoms. And now it's under attack today. They don't really realize what this document has done, the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Again, it's colorblind. It's for everybody. All right. We talked a little bit about Jamestown and the socialism. And again, once they unleashed the property rights, things started to take off. Free enterprise. Now I'm on page number 3. 200 years later, this page talks about all the inventions, how it moved our country forward. Gigantic new power resources were harnessed, electricity, internal combustion engine, jet propulsion, exotic space travels. Up to this time, hardly anything was going on. And these guys used the same tools as some of the ancient people were using. Came over in the same old boats they had before. But until the free enterprise was unleashed, and people got to enjoy the fruits of their labor, that's when things really took off. Give people freedom, and things happen. Take it away, things go bad. But then the next page talks about some people are still stuck muddling their lives with drugs, riots, revolutions, and terrorism, predatory wars, unnatural sexual practices, merry-go-round marriages, organized crime, neglected and sometimes brutalized children, plateau and intoxication, debt-ridden prosperity. All the ingredients of insanity which have shattered 20 mighty civilizations in the past. Why do you think they're like that? Why do you think some people are like that? What are they missing? God, yeah, they're missing God. They sure are. And then on page 5, there was hardly a single idea which the American founding fathers put into their formula that someone hadn't thought of before. We talked about this. However, that singularity of it all was the fact that in 1787, when the Constitution was being written, none of those ideas were being substantially practiced anywhere in the world. It was in America that the founding fathers assembled the 28 great ideas that produced the dynamic success formula which proved such a sensational blessing to modern man. America, that banner of human hope, is raised again. And the next section, structuring a government with all the power and the people. So we'll discuss that a little bit. And Chuck mentioned a little earlier why they wanted the power of the people, because they didn't want a monarchy. They didn't want a tyrannical ruler. Our system was actually based on natural law. That's God's law. They're fixed. They're perfect. It's something we could actually never attain to perfection, but it's something we should always be moving, trying to move towards. Whereas a tyrant, think about it, if a tyrant's in charge, they might start off with good intentions, but then we see what power and money does to some people. Bad decisions. So that's why it's dangerous to have a monarchy or a tyrant. And then on the other side, they talked about anarchy, where everybody does what they want. And we've seen some of that in the cities last year. That's not good. And then our founding fathers thought, you know, when they talked about fascism and communism, our founding fathers thought those were actually two and the same, because the people weren't in charge. Is it a ruler? They're always in charge. And ruler's law on page 11. This is authority, tyrannical. Authority under ruler's law is nearly always established by force, violence, and conquest. And remember, our country is actually assembled. Therefore, all sovereign power is considered to be in the conqueror or his descendants. The people are not equal, but are divided into classes and are looked upon as subjects of the king. The entire country is considered to be the property of the ruler. He speaks of it as his realm. And it goes on. And you guys can read that. We can discuss a little bit more next week if you want. And then it goes on to talk about the characteristics of Anglo-Saxon common law, people's law. They consider themselves a commonwealth of free men, and this is on page 13. All decisions and the selections of leaders had to be with the consent of the people, preferably by full consensus, not just a majority. The laws by which they were governed were considered natural laws given by divine dispensation and were so well known by the people that they did not have to be written down. Power was dispersed among the people and never allowed to concentrate on any one person or group, even in time of war. You know, and they got, again, a lot of their knowledge from the Bible. And here it references Exodus. Remember, all the people were going to Moses, and he's just getting overwhelmed. It wasn't his father-in-law, it was Jethro, right? They came up and said, hey, I don't know if he said that, but you're going to kill yourself. You need to have help. Why don't you just take the most important things, the hardest things, and you do them, and we'll have other people down the line handle the little stuff. And that's the way our system's set up now. The family should handle most of the problems. Then it goes to local. We have a county, then state, and then federal. Should be handling very few things just to protect the United States from foreign and domestic enemies. Pretty much nothing else. Now our federal government's in almost everything we do, which was not, our founders would be very disappointed because that's not how it was designed. They should be doing very little. Okay? Characteristics of Anglo-Saxon common law, people's law. Oh, we just went over that. Okay. And on page 14, it actually gives you two diagrams. One diagram down at the bottom talks about all the power in the ruler. And you can see how the triangle goes down. Individual has little power. And the triangle is actually reversed when people have all the power and very little power on the national level. That's the way it was set up. And actually, the founders note similarities between Anglo-Saxon common law and the people law of ancient Israel. And it references a lot of Bible verses in here. Jeremiah 34:17. Talks about liberty for you, saith the Lord. And Exodus 18:26. I can read a little bit out of the Bible here. If you guys had a microphone, I have you guys read. There's only one microphone, right? Yeah, okay. 18:26. For you to have a Bible. So they judge the people at all times. They would bring the hard cases of Moses, but they would judge every minor case themselves. So they got a lot of wisdom out of the Bible, our founding fathers. A lot of wisdom. Okay. And it goes on, it talks about seals and stuff. I think these are on coins on page 18. How they set it up with Israel and then also the United States. The burning fire there. Bush. Oh. And then on page 19, when they first actually set up a constitution, it actually, it didn't go well. The very first one they set up. Articles of Confederation gave too much power to the central government. And they found out it was a problem because of the war. The government couldn't get the supplies to the men. So they knew it was a problem. So they knew they had to make some change. And did you guys know that George Washington actually fought for Great Britain before the Revolution? Did you know that? Yeah, I think he was a commander or lieutenant. And he had men under him. He had men from Great Britain and the colonies under him. And the men, he got disappointed because the men, they would have the same duty as far as the war, same title. This is the French and Indian War. He fought for Great Britain. But the people from Great Britain, the officers from Great Britain, were getting paid more than the people from the colonies, states. He didn't like that, so I think he ended up quitting. And we know what happened after that because he actually led the Revolutionary War. And the Revolutionary War was actually fought, they didn't go into the revolution at first, they just want representation. And Great Britain actually went and taxed the colonies because of the French and Indian War. They must have been broke. They spent too much money. That, and then the states said, the colonies said, well, just give us seats on Parliament. Didn't happen. So then it turned into a full-blown revolution after that. And we got our independence. So a little history, little facts. Fighting for Great Britain and fighting for the colonies. Okay. You guys can hear me okay? Okay. All right. And on page 22, they actually set it up so it was easy to converse, the Founding Fathers. They wanted to seek a consensus or general agreement on what the Constitution should provide. And after 4 months of debate, they were able to reach general agreement on just about everything except the issues of slavery, proportionate representation, and the regulation of commerce. And again, the southern slaves were really big in slavery. North, not so much. And I wrote some more research. Let me find it here. Talked a little bit about the Founding Fathers. You know, Thomas Jefferson, he owned slaves his whole life. He actually owned them up till his death. He actually tried to abolish slavery, but he kept slavery. So it's kind of one of those things, why? Don't know. George Washington, we talked about that. Samuel Adams, staunchly anti-slavery. There's about a third I read on our Founding Fathers that actually had slaves. A lot of them didn't. A lot of them were against it. And then there were some very influential ladies, women that were influential in founding, had great influence on the founding of the nation. Abigail Davis, Dolly Madison, and Mercy Otis Warren. So very instrumental in the founding of the nation and research. Okay. And some more out of the book. It talks about the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution of the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to all the objects which in the ordinary course of affairs concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. I wrote about this in the Federalist Papers. And they wanted to set it up to keep the power base close to the people. And again, strong local governments. It also goes on in the book, you guys will read about this, it talks about extremists. They had extremists in both parties at that time. Huh? And then the founders on page 29, it talks about the founders warned against the drift toward the collective left. Talked about a welfare state, government endeavors to take care of everyone from the cradle to the grave. Jefferson wrote, if we can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them, they must become happy. So you're actually stealing their labor when you give handouts. So their way to prosperity. They warned about compensatory taxation and deficit spending. Jefferson said that it is immoral for one generation to pass on the results of its extravagance in the form of debts in the next generation. That's on page 30. It talks about equal protection of the rights, not to have the government to get involved in trying to provide equal distribution of things. They also warned against the pooling of property as advocated by the proponents of communism. Sammy Adams said that they had done everything possible to make the ideas of socialism and communism unconstitutional. And that's probably why it's being attacked today. The socialist communists actually probably want to take down the country. But as we know, socialism and communism, they don't work. They fail over and over again. It failed in our country in the 1600s. Starvation, disease, took most of the lives. I read that 8,000 or 9,000 came over. There's only 1,000 left after disease. Starvation. The utopian schemes of levying redistribution of the wealth and a community of good ownership of the means of production and distribution are visionary and impracticable as those which are vest all property in the crown. So both are impractical. Now, page 31. This is Jefferson again. He hammered this home. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. No other sure foundation can be devised for the preservation of freedom and happiness. Preach a crusade against ignorance, establish and improve the law for educating the common people. Let our countrymen know that the people alone can protect us against their evils of misgovernment. So a lot of our schools, we talk about a lot of our schools, and what was taken out of our schools a long time ago? Bible was, yeah, God. Some of the schools don't even do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you take the Bible out, what's the Bible teach us? Pretty much everywhere, everything to live a life, right? Right and wrong, it's all in the book. Now you take this out of the schools, how do kids know right and wrong? No. The Founding Fathers knew that, and this was in all schools back then. They knew that. That's why we're seeing all these protests and stuff. These kids really don't know their history. They don't know the founding of the country, why it was founded. So, and the freedoms and liberties that they do have, and even to go out and picket or hopefully not riot, but protest would be the right word, not destroy stuff. So, yep, this stuff needs to get back into schools. And then on page 32, fundamental principles at the bottom of the page, it says, the relative uniformity of fundamental thought shared by these men included strong and unusually well-defined convictions concerning religious principles, political precepts, economic fundamentals, and long-range social goals. They did quarrel. The book talks about these guys did quarrel. They didn't all agree on everything, but once somebody stepped forward and did something like George Washington, the rest of them got behind him to get things done. That was the beauty of the government back then. Now, I don't know how many years back, our government can't get anything done. So, deadlocked all the time. That's not the way we're set up. And next week, we're going to start the first principle. It talks about the only reliable basis for sound government and just human relations is natural law. Start out. What do you think that is? Anybody have any idea? Or people that have read the book? Based on natural law. We touched on it.
From God and the Trinity.
So we got people that actually want to be in power, and it's whatever they think is right. Well, every day they wake up, it could be something different. And that's not good. Our laws are based on, they're fixed. They're perfect. Okay? Everybody knows what they are. And that's the power of our country. Okay. All right. Let's see what other notes I have here. That was it, the 33. We went through 33 pages in about 40 minutes. That's pretty quick. Okay. Little tidbits. We talked a little bit about slavery. Do you guys think slavery is still going on today? How is it, Chuck? How? What kind of slavery are you seeing? Yeah. 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 We're perceived that way. Yeah. But throughout history, and again, the Constitution unleashed freedoms for everybody in the United States. Doesn't matter your sex, religion, race, doesn't matter. And unleashed a lot of freedoms. And you're right, slavery is still going on today. But we seem to focus on the past. And the stuff that went on in the past, the United States was bad. There was some bad stuff that went on. There's bad stuff that went on in the Bible. I mean, you go through the Old Testament, and there's some bad stuff, brutal stuff that went on. And this one's been going on forever. Wasn't right. Don't know why, again, they didn't abolish it when the Constitution was made. But yeah, you look at forced labor, debt bondage, domestic servitude, human trafficking, child labor, marriage and slavery is still going on today. Why isn't our focus on that instead of the past? Why aren't we trying to fix what's going on today instead of focusing on the bad stuff that happened in the past? It's been estimated, I read that there's up to 400,000 humans trafficked. I think that's in the United States, and a million worldwide. So it's still going on today in some countries. So our focus should be on that, freeing people. We should use the power of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, not in the United States, but around the world. People around actually other countries should adopt these principles so they can end some of this bad stuff. There's always been good and bad people throughout history. Doesn't matter what race, color, sex you are. There's always good and bad. But again, it comes back to either a participant, a patriot of the country, or you're an agitator. You're going to either move it forward or move it back. And that's what the objective of this book is, to move it forward. We get back to these principles, what made our country strong. And I think we'll move back in the right direction. So I have actually a copy of the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence are in here. I've got another handout for you. Actually, it's a bookmark with the 28 principles on the back of it. So I'll give each one of you those. So any other questions or comments when we close up? And we'll be back next week again. Pastor Dave will be here with me to go over some of the principles. Any questions before we close? Every Thursday, 6:30, yeah. Yeah, well, we'd like you to be here to participate. But yeah, it's going through October, I think, October 7th. So it's a lot of principles, a lot of discussion. Time to what? Catch up. Sounds good. Well, thank you. Would anybody like to close us in prayer? Anybody's got a microphone? No? Okay, thank you.
On? Are we on? Lord, thank you again for this evening. Thank you for our class tonight, Lord. Just open our hearts and our minds. And thank you for the foundation of this country. And Lord, help us to turn our hearts back to you. And bless this class for the remainder of the time. We pray in Christ's name. Amen.